It was 6 o'clock in the morning when the pounding on my door jolted me awake. These weren't ordinary knocks, not the casual rap of a mail carrier or the tentative tap of a distracted neighbor. These were hard, insistent, desperate blows that yanked me from sleep with my heart already racing. That sinking feeling washed over me, the kind that tells you something terrible is unfolding. I sat up in bed, disoriented, trying to make sense of what was happening. Darkness still cloaked the world outside. The first hints of dawn were just beginning to filter through my bedroom curtains in pale, hesitant streaks. Who could possibly be knocking at this ungodly hour? For a moment, I considered ignoring it, lying back down and pretending I hadn't heard a thing. But the pounding continued, growing more urgent, more frantic with each passing second. I threw off the covers, grabbed a robe I always kept hanging beside the bed, and padded barefoot down the cold hallway of my house. Every step I took toward that door ratcheted up my nervousness another notch. Something in the air felt strange, heavy, as if the morning itself sensed that this day wouldn't be like the others. I reached the front door and peered through the peephole. It was Arthur, my lifelong neighbor, the man who lived 3 houses down, the same man who'd helped me restore the yard after Elijah died 5 years ago. But this wasn't the calm, kind Arthur I knew. His face was ashen, distraught. His eyes were wide, filled with something I recognized immediately. Fear. Genuine, deep-rooted fear, the kind you can't fake. I opened the door slowly, just enough to see him better. He stepped forward, nearly stumbling over his own words. "Era, listen to me. Don't leave the house today. Please, trust me. Don't go out for any reason." His voice was trembling. Arthur never trembled. He was a man in his late 60s, a military veteran. Someone who'd witnessed things in his life I couldn't even begin to imagine. And here he stood, begging me to listen with an urgency that chilled me to the bone. "What is it, Arthur? What are you talking about? What's wrong?" He glanced behind him at the empty street, as if he expected to see something or someone. Then he looked back at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to tell me everything. But he didn't. He just shook his head with an expression of anguish I'd never seen on his face before. "I can't explain it now. Just stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't open up for anyone, not even if they look like officials. Do you understand? Nobody." A shiver ran down my spine. "Officials? What are you talking about? Why can't you just tell me what's happening? Arthur, you're scaring me. Tell me what's going on." "You'll understand this afternoon. I promise you'll understand. But right now I need you to trust me. Please, Zara, please." And before I could answer, before I could demand a real explanation, he was already backing away, retreating down the driveway. I watched him disappear into the dimness of the morning, walking fast, constantly looking side to side, as if he were being pursued. I closed the door with shaky hands and stood there in the silence of my own home, trying to process what had just happened. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. What the hell was that? I walked to the kitchen. I needed a glass of water. I needed to think clearly. I flicked on the light, and the sudden glare made me blink. Everything in my house looked normal. The table where I ate breakfast, the cups hanging in their designated spots, the wall clock Elijah had given me on our 30th anniversary. Everything was the same, yet nothing felt the same. I poured myself water with hands that still trembled and sank into one of the chairs. Why was Arthur so terrified? And why couldn't he tell me the reason? He and I had a good relationship. After Elijah died, Arthur had been one of the few people who genuinely cared. He'd helped me with heavy tasks around the house. He'd invited me over for coffee now and then. He was always there when I needed him. But this was different. This wasn't a courtesy visit or a favor between neighbors. This was a warning. An urgent, desperate, terrifying warning. I looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. outside. The sky was slowly beginning to brighten, painting itself in shades of orange and rose. Any other day, I'd be getting ready to go out. Tuesdays, I always went to the Cedar Grove Community Center to help with the children's reading program. It was something I'd started doing after I was widowed, a way to fill the hours, to feel useful, to avoid being alone in this house full of memories. But today, Arthur had told me not to leave, to stay locked inside. Why? What could be so dangerous out there that he felt compelled to come to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning to warn me? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he'd heard something on the news. Maybe there was a security alert in the neighborhood. But then why didn't he tell me directly? Why all the mystery? And why did he tell me not to open the door, even if they looked like officials? That part unsettled me more than anything else. Officials of what? Police? Government? What kind of situation requires you distrust the authorities? I got up and walked to the living room window. I pulled back just a corner of the curtain and looked outside. The street was empty and quiet. The trees swayed gently in the morning breeze. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Too normal, perhaps. Then I saw it. A car parked at the end of the street, right on the corner. A gray sedan with tinted windows. It didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. I was certain of that. I knew my neighbors' cars. This one was new, and something about the way it was parked, slightly angled as if the driver wanted a clear view of the entire street, set my nerves on edge. Was that car there before? I didn't remember, but I also didn't usually pay attention to such things. Until today. I let the curtain fall and backed away from the window, feeling a rising paranoia. This was ridiculous. I was a 68-year-old retired widow with a simple, predictable life. Who would want to hurt me? Why would anyone be watching my house? But the look on Arthur's face was still etched in my mind. The fear in his eyes had been real. And Arthur was not a man who scared easily. I went back to the kitchen and made myself some coffee this time. I needed caffeine. I needed to be wide awake and think this through clearly. While the water boiled, I took out my phone. Maybe I should call someone. But who? My children lived far away. Shayla was in another state, working on her law career. Jackson was overseas, pursuing his dreams of being a photographer. We talked last Sunday, our routine weekly call. Everything had been normal, everything fine. I couldn't call him now and tell him I was scared because my neighbor told me not to leave the house. Alarm bells would ring. They wanted me to move in with one of them, to leave this house, this life. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The coffee was ready, and I sat back down at the table, staring at the steaming cup. What was I supposed to do? Sit here all day waiting for what exactly to happen? Arthur said I'd understand by the afternoon. What was going to happen in the afternoon? I took a sip of coffee that scorched my tongue. The pain brought me back to reality. I needed to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Arthur had had a nightmare or was going through something personal and didn't want to worry me with the details. The phone rang. I jumped so violently I almost spilled the coffee. My heart sped up again. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the answer button. What if it was part of what Arthur had warned me about? But it could also be a normal call, a survey, a salesperson. I answered. Hello. Silence. I could hear someone on the other end. A soft breath, but nobody spoke. Hello? Who is this? More silence, and then a click. They hung up. I slowly lowered the phone, looking at it as if it were a strange, dangerous object. A silent call. At 6:30 in the morning, right after Arthur's warning. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. I got up again, this time with more urgency, and checked all the doors in the house. The front door was locked. The back door leading to the yard was locked. The windows were all closed. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, but I also felt a little safer. I went back to the living room and sat on the sofa, hugging a cushion to my chest. Outside, the day continued to lighten. The world was waking up as it always did. But I was in here, locked away, scared, not understanding what was happening. And the worst part of it all was the waiting. Arthur said I'd understand by the afternoon. That meant hours of being here alone with my imagination conjuring the most terrible scenarios. I looked at the clock again. 6:45. The day had just begun, and it already felt like an eternity. The hours passed with unbearable slowness. I sat on the sofa, checking the clock every 5 minutes, feeling time crawl as if the day itself was conspiring against my sanity. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the television, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. The news talked about the weather, politics, sports, all normal. Nothing that explained why my neighbor had appeared terrified at my door. I turned off the television, and silence filled the house again. That silence I knew so well, which had been my constant companion for the last 5 years. Since Elijah died, the quiet had become something familiar, almost comforting. But today was different. Today, the silence didn't comfort me. It oppressed me. I got up and walked through the house, checking the windows again, making sure everything was closed. I felt ridiculous doing this, like a paranoid old woman seeing danger where there was none. But I couldn't help it. Every noise startled me. The wind against the windows, the creaking of the house's old wood, the distant hum of a car passing on the street. I reached the room that had been Elijah's and mine for 35 years of marriage. Now it was just mine. The bed was perfectly made, the curtains half closed, his things still on the nightstand. I'd never had the courage to remove them. His watch, his reading glasses, the book he never finished. Sometimes I came in here just to feel him close, to remember what it was like to have someone in this house, what it was like not to be alone. The children had suggested 1,000 times that I sell the house, that I move to something smaller, more manageable. "It's too big for you alone, Mom," Shayla would say every time we talked. And she was right. This 3-bedroom house with its big yard and long hallways was too much for a woman my age. But it was my house. It was the place where I had built my life, where I had raised my children, where I had loved and had lost. I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. I went back to the living room and peeked through the window again. The gray car was still there. It hadn't moved in 2 hours. This could no longer be a coincidence. Someone was watching the street, or watching me. A chill went through me. Why would anyone want to watch me? I wasn't anyone important. I was just a retired widow living off my pension, and the savings Elijah had left. We'd had a modest life. We'd never had a lot of money. Elijah had worked his whole life as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. He did his job. He came home. We ate dinner together. We watched TV. A simple, predictable life without secrets or mysteries. Or so I thought. I moved away from the window and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat something, even though I wasn't hungry. I made a sandwich that I barely tasted. The food felt like a knot in my throat. My stomach was clenched shut by anxiety. The phone rang again. This time I almost dropped it. I grabbed it with trembling hands and looked at the screen. Unknown number again, different from the morning one, but just as anonymous. I hesitated. Should I answer? What if it was the same person as before? I answered. "Hello?" Silence again. But this time I could hear something else. Background noise, as if the call was in a public place. Distant voices, the sound of traffic. Who is this? Why are you calling me? Nothing. Just that soft, almost imperceptible breathing. And then, click, they hung up again. I put the phone on the table and sat down, feeling tears threaten to fall. I wasn't a woman who cried easily. I had learned to be strong when Elijah died. I'd had to be, but this was overwhelming me. This feeling of not knowing what was happening, of being caught up in something I didn't understand. Why were they doing this to me? What did they want from me? I looked at the clock. 10 o'clock in the morning. For more hours until 2 in the afternoon. For eternal hours. I got up and started pacing through the house again, unable to stay still. I walked past the hallway full of family photographs. Shayla and Jackson when they were little, smiling in their school uniforms. Our wedding, me in my white dress, and Elijah so young and handsome. Vacations at the beach, birthdays, graduations, a whole life captured in frames hung on the wall. I stopped in front of a photo of Elijah taken a few months before he died. He was in the garden with his gardening tools, smiling at the camera. He looked happy, healthy. No one would have imagined that 3 months later, he would suffer a massive heart attack in his sleep. The doctor said it was fast, that he didn't suffer. That was supposed to comfort me, but it never did. I missed him so much. I missed his voice, his laugh, the way he would hug me at night before bed. I missed having someone to share my days with, Someone who made me feel less alone in this world. What's going on, Elijah? I whispered to the photograph. Why am I so scared? Obviously, there was no answer. Just the silence of the house and the ticking of the wall clock. I kept walking and reached the den Elijah used for working from home when he brought papers from the office. I hadn't touched much of this room after his death. The children had helped me pack some things, but most of it was still there, his files, his folders, his desk kept in the meticulous way he always maintained it. I went in and sat in his chair. The old leather creaked under my weight. I ran my fingers over the surface of the desk, collecting a little of the dust that had settled over the years. Elijah had spent hours here reviewing numbers, making calculations, working on things I never really understood. He was a numbers person. I was the homemaker, the mother, the one who kept everything running while he brought in the money. That's how our marriage worked, and it had never bothered me. We were a team, each with our role, but now I wondered if I had truly known my husband. Were there secrets in his life I didn't know about? Things he hid from me to protect me? I shook my head. I was being ridiculous. Elijah had been a good, honest, transparent man. There were no secrets, no mysteries. It was just fear talking, making me doubt everything. I got up from the chair and was about to leave the den when I heard something that froze my blood. Footsteps. Outside. In the yard. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. The steps were slow, deliberate. Someone was walking along the side of my house. I cautiously approached the den window, moving as silently as possible. The curtains were partially closed. I peered just one eye around the edge and looked outside. There was a man in my yard, tall, dressed in dark clothes, walking slowly down the side path. It wasn't anyone I knew. His hands were in his pockets, and he was looking at the house, studying it as if he were searching for something. Panic surged through me. I backed away from the window, stumbling over my own feet. Who was he? What was he doing on my property? I should call the police. But Arthur had told me not to open up for anyone, not even officials. Did that mean I shouldn't trust the police either? I looked out again, more cautious this time. The man was still there, now looking toward the windows. For one terrible second, I thought he had seen me, but he kept walking, circling the house, disappearing toward the backyard. I ran to the kitchen, which had a view of the back patio. I got there just in time to see him trying to handle the back door. My door. He was trying to get in. I choked back a scream. The door was locked. Thank God. But he kept trying, pushing gently, testing if it would give. I backed away from the window with my hands over my mouth, trying to control my breathing. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps moved away. I looked again. The man was gone, disappearing the same way he had arrived. I dropped into a kitchen chair, trembling from head to toe. Someone had tried to break into my house. Someone was watching me, following me, testing my doors. Arthur was right. Something terrible was happening. I looked at the clock through tear-filled eyes. 11:30 in the morning. There were still 2.5 hours to go. How much more could I endure? I grabbed my phone with shaky hands and typed a message to Arthur. Someone was in my yard. Try to open my door. I'm scared. What's going on? I sent the message and waited, staring at the screen in desperation. The minutes passed. 1, 2, 10. No reply. Please, Arthur, answer me. Nothing. The silence in my house was now deafening. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound was a threat. I felt like a cornered animal, waiting for the moment the predator would finally attack. And the worst part was I didn't even know who the predator was or why they had chosen me. The phone rang at exactly 12 o'clock noon, as if the caller had been waiting for that precise moment. This time it wasn't an unknown number. The screen simply said, Police Department. My heart leaped. With trembling hands, I slid my finger to answer. Hello, Mrs. Era Vance? It was a masculine voice, official and serious. Yes, this is me. Mrs. Vance, this is Detective Carter with the police department. I need you to stay calm and listen to what I'm about to tell you. The tone of his voice made my stomach churn. Something bad had happened. Something very bad. What? What's going on? Ma'am, where are you located right now? The question threw me off. Why did he need to know where I was? I'm at my house. Why? What's wrong? There was a pause on the other end. I could hear voices in the background, movement, as if the detective was in the middle of something important. Mrs. Vance, I need you to confirm something for me. Were you at the Cedar Grove Community Center this morning? I froze. The Cedar Grove Community Center was exactly where I went every Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, where I would have been if Arthur hadn't warned me to stay home. I know. I didn't. My voice trembled. No, I've been here at my house all morning. Why? What happened? Another pause, this time longer. When the detective spoke again, his tone was different, more cautious, more concerned. Ma'am, this morning at 9:20, there was an incident at the community center, a serious incident, and we have multiple testimonies from people who assure us they saw you there. I felt like the floor was opening up beneath me. What? No, that's impossible. I wasn't there. I'm telling you, I've been at my house all morning. I understand, ma'am, but I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. There are witnesses who identified you. There are even recordings from the center security cameras. That can't be. It has to be a mistake. I didn't leave my house. Mrs. Vance, is there anyone who can corroborate that you were at home this morning? Any family member? Any neighbor? I thought of Arthur, but he had specifically warned me not to open the door to anyone. That included the police. Besides, he hadn't answered my message. I had no way to prove where I had been. I was alone. But I swear to you I didn't leave. What incident? What happened? The detective sighed on the other end of the line. I'd rather not give details over the phone, ma'am. I need you to come down to the station so we can clear this up. Go to the station? Am I being accused of something? I'm not saying that, ma'am. We just need you to come in and give your statement and help us understand what happened. This is very serious. My mind was a chaos of contradictory thoughts. Arthur had told me not to leave, not to open up, even for officials. But now the police were asking me to come to the station. What was I supposed to do? I need time to process this. Can I come later? Mrs. Vance, I really need you to come now. If you weren't at the center, as you claim, then we have a much bigger problem. Someone is using your identity. The words fell on me like stones. Someone is using my identity. What did that mean? Someone was impersonating me? Why? I don't understand any of this. How is it possible that someone... That's why we need you to come in, ma'am. To resolve this, I can send a patrol car to pick you up if you prefer. No. The word came out louder than I intended. No. Let me think. I need a moment. Mrs. Vance, if you don't come voluntarily, I'll have to... I hung up. I knew it was stupid. I knew I probably made things worse, but panic overcame me. I dropped the phone onto the sofa and put my hands over my head. What was happening? How was it possible that there were witnesses who saw me in a place I hadn't been? And what incident had occurred? The detective said it was serious. How serious? The phone rang again immediately. The police department again. I didn't answer. It kept ringing. 1, 2, 3 times, until it finally stopped. I got up and started pacing back and forth across the living room, trying to think, try and make sense of it all. Someone had impersonated me. Someone who knew exactly where I went on Tuesday mornings. Someone who knew my routine. And something had happened. Something serious enough that the police were calling me. Something they were now blaming me for. I ran to the window and looked outside. The gray car was no longer in its spot. Now there was a police cruiser parked at the end of the street. 2 officers were inside, looking toward my house. Fear turned into pure terror. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to faint. This was real. Everything was real. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. Something terrible was happening, and I was at the center of it all. I grabbed my phone again and wrote to Arthur again, this time with more desperation. The police called. They say they saw me at the community center. that something serious happened. There's a patrol car outside my house. Arthur, please, I need you to help me. I need you to explain what's going on. I sent a message and waited, tears streaming down my cheeks. This time, the reply came almost immediately. Don't open the door, no matter what they say. I'm on my way. Give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes? I had to hold out for 20 more minutes. I looked out the window again. The officers were still in the cruiser, but now one of them was talking on the radio, probably reporting that I was home, that I hadn't left, that I wasn't answering their calls. How long before they decided to come get me? Did they have an arrest warrant? Could they enter my house without my permission? I didn't know anything about law. I had never had problems with the police in my life. I had been an exemplary citizen for 68 years, and now I was hiding in my own house, terrified of the very officers who were supposed to protect me. The phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but different from the previous ones. I hesitated to answer, but something in me needed to know more. I answered, "Hello, Mrs. Vance." It was a feminine voice this time, young, nervous. "Who is this?" "My name is Belle. I work at the Cedar Grove Community Center. Ma'am, I need to talk to you. It's about what happened this morning." My breathing quickened. "What happened?" "No one wants to tell me exactly what happened. It's complicated. The woman who was here this morning, the one we all thought was you, she did something terrible. She stole money from the donation box. Over $3,000 we had raised for the scholarship program. And not only that, she also took files from the administrative office, personal documents of several volunteers and program participants. I sank onto the sofa, feeling my legs fail me. But I didn't do it. I didn't do that. Why would they do this to me?" "I know," Belle said, and her voice sounded genuinely confused. "That's why I'm calling you. Because something doesn't add up. That woman looked a lot like you, Mrs. Vance. A whole lot. But when I saw her up close, something was wrong. Her eyes, the way she walked, how she talked. It was you, but it wasn't you. Do you understand what I mean?" "I don't understand anything. How is it possible that someone looks so much like me? And why? To steal $3,000? That's what doesn't make sense," Belle continued. $3,000 is money, yes, but someone who went to the trouble of impersonating you, of knowing your routine, your schedule, why risk it for that amount? And the files she took were specific records, as if she knew exactly what she was looking for. "What kind of files?" "I can't give details, ma'am, but they were sensitive documents. Personal information. The director is furious, and the police are investigating. But I just felt I had to call you because when I saw that woman this morning, something inside me told me something was wrong. And now that I know it wasn't really you, it all makes more sense." "Did you tell this to the police?" "Yes, but they're focused on finding you. They have your fingerprints on the box. Witnesses who identified you. For them, it's an open-end shut case. My fingerprints? How could they have my fingerprints if I wasn't there?" There was an awkward silence on the other end. "I don't know, ma'am, but they have them. Detective Carter told me." I hung up the phone, feeling like I was going to vomit. My fingerprints. How was that possible? How could someone have my fingerprints? Then I remembered. 2 months ago, I had gone to the bank to renew some documents. They'd asked for my digital fingerprints for the new debit card. A standard procedure, they said, something for extra security. It was possible that someone had accessed that information, that they had used it. I looked at the clock. 10 minutes had passed since Arthur's message. 10 more minutes. But then I heard something that froze my blood. Footsteps on the porch. Knocking on the door. But they weren't desperate knocks like Arthur's this morning. They were firm, authoritative knocks. "Mrs. Vance? Police department. We need you to open the door." I was paralyzed in the middle of the living room, looking at the door as if it were a living creature about to devour me. The knocking continued, more insistent each time. "Mrs. Vance, we know you're in there. Please open the door. We just want to talk to you." It was Detective Carter's voice, the same voice I had heard on the phone minutes earlier. But hearing it on the other side of my door, so close, terrified me in a way I couldn't explain. Arthur had told me not to open up, not to trust anyone, not even officials. But how could I not open for police? Wouldn't refusing just make everything worse? Ma'am, if you don't open voluntarily, we'll have to consider other options. We don't want to go there. Other options? What did that mean? Breaking down the door? A warrant? My mind tried to process all the possibilities while my feet remained glued to the floor. I slowly approached the door, without making a sound, and looked through the peephole. It was two men dressed in dark suits. One of them, the one who had been speaking, was about 50, with graying hair and a serious expression. The other was younger, standing slightly behind, looking around the porch as if he expected someone else to appear. We just want to clarify the community center situation, the detective continued. If you truly weren't there as you claim, then we need your help finding the person who was. It's as simple as that. It sounded reasonable, logical, exactly what a real detective would say. But something in his tone, in the way he looked through the peephole, told me this wasn't that simple. I need to speak with my attorney first, I finally said, surprised at myself at how firm my voice sounded. The two men exchanged glances. Ma'am, you are not being accused of anything yet. We just need your statement. You don't need an attorney for a conversation. Yet, that word echoed in my mind. I wasn't being accused yet, but I would be soon if I didn't cooperate. I prefer to wait anyway. The detective sighed, and for a moment, I thought they would leave. But then he pulled something out of his pocket, a photograph. Can you at least look at this, Mrs. Vance? He brought it close to the peephole. It was a security camera image, grainy and black and white, but clear. It showed a woman entering the community center, a woman who looked exactly like me. My heart stopped. It was like looking in a mirror. The same height, the same haircut, the same way of walking. She even wore similar clothes to what I would have worn, dark slacks and a light blouse with a cardigan over it. That's you, Mrs. Vance. I couldn't answer. I was too shocked. Who was that woman? How is it possible that she looked so much like me? She has your face, your build, your way of dressing, he pressed. The center employees recognized her immediately. They even called her by name, and she answered. Are you telling me you have a twin no one knows about? I don't have any siblings, I whispered, though I wasn't sure if they had heard me. The detective put the photograph away, and his expression hardened. Mrs. Vance, this isn't going to disappear. The longer you go without cooperating, the worse this will look for you. I suggest you reconsider your decision. I already told you I wasn't there. I don't know who that woman is, but it's not me. Then help us prove it. Come with us. Give your statement. Allow us to take your fingerprints for comparison. You already have my fingerprints. I interrupted. You said you found them at the scene. Another exchange of glances between the two men. The younger one approached and whispered something in the detective's ear. Carter nodded slowly. That's true. We have them, which makes your insistence that you weren't there even harder to believe. Do you understand the situation you're putting yourself in? Yes, I understood. I perfectly understood that someone had planned this very carefully. Someone who knew where I went, how I dressed, how I talked. Someone who had somehow gotten hold of my fingerprints. This wasn't a random robbery. It was a calculated operation. But why? Why me? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to open this door, Mrs. Vance, the detective said. And now his voice held a threatening tone. 5 minutes. After that, we're going to have to take more drastic measures. They backed away from the porch and walked toward the cruiser still parked on the street. I watched them talking to each other, one of them making a call on his radio. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling. Where was Arthur? 15 minutes had already passed. I needed him to get here, to explain what the hell was going on. I went back to the living room window and watched. The two men were still next to the cruiser, waiting. The younger one kept checking his watch. Detective Carter was talking on the phone, gesturing with his hands, as if he were arguing with someone. Then I saw another car approaching on the street, a black sedan, newer than the other cars in the neighborhood. It parked behind the cruiser, and a woman got out. She wore a formal suit and sunglasses, even though the day was overcast. She approached Detective Carter, and they started talking. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the conversation seemed tense. The woman pointed toward my house. The detective shook his head. She insisted. Who was she? Another detective? A prosecutor? My phone vibrated. A message from Arthur, 2 blocks away. Don't open the door. No matter what happens, don't open. 2 blocks. He was almost here. I just needed to hold out a little longer. But then the woman in the suit started walking toward my house. Not toward the front door, but toward the side, the same path the man in dark clothes had taken this morning. She disappeared from my sight. I ran to the kitchen to see what she was doing. I saw her walking along the side yard, looking at the windows, studying the house. She reached the back door and, to my horror, pulled something out of her purse, a small metallic tool.